Hi everyone, and welcome to our Worried About Nothing podcast. Today we thought we might talk about relating to others in times of change and what that is like for us. My name's Kim.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Katya.
So I just thought it might be interesting to talk about relating to others because there's so much change happening at the moment, not only globally, but energetically and just in all directions, all ways. And I thought it might be interesting just to touch on that, see how we're finding it. So how are we finding it?
I've definitely noticed things changing, and it's been for a while now. It was started at the end of last summer, or maybe fall. And it was in relating to my parents because I mostly see my family. And I noticed it between other members of my family and myself and them as well, is that we can have these kind of, they're not really explosive, but these little fights. But it's just everything gets worked out really quickly, or we don't really care that we're acting kind of obnoxiously, I guess. I don't know. It's you could just be acting like a jerk, and then it's just we just kind of work our way through it, and then everything's fine. It's just really interesting to watch because I'm I don't know if this has always happened and I'm just realizing it now, or if it's something that's new, because I used to not call my mom on a lot of the stuff that she would say. I would just be it would be more looking at her kind of dumbfounded, what do you even mean about that? But now I'm more you realize that's inaccurate, right? It's just a really quick fight and then it's over. But it's just been really interesting to watch, and I'm lucky that with my family it's not really, at least on my end, it doesn't seem like anyone takes it so personal to the point where anyone's getting really emotional about it. So it's, in watching it, it's something that looks like it could turn really emotional, but it doesn't. So I feel maybe it's just us working out different types of patterns real quick together, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. Speed it up and more honest and more truthful as well. It feels like it's more open, which is great. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that the dynamics between family members, because I'm not really in touch with my family much right now. So I can't really speak from that perspective, but just relating to other people, people that come into work or people I see on the street or friends or that kind of thing, it's noticeably different as well. To me, it feels very much like the veil of the illusion of separation has just really been pulled back, so touching on what you were saying, Danielle, the interrelating and maybe arguments that come up, because to me, it's so more strongly than ever, it feels like there's no separation. So if you're arguing with somebody, you're resolving something within yourself and it's happening really quickly. So for me, it's very noticeable who is still clinging on to this idea or this story of being separate, of being different, of being away from others, So for example, this whole COVID restriction, ridiculous ludicrousness of keep away from others, don't touch others, keep your distance, all of this stuff is becoming more and more clearly stupid, because now in these times of it clearly being that we are all one, the people that are clinging onto that very much have their heads in the sand, are very much not realizing what is true, and I feel like you were saying, Danielle, the kind of being able to be more truthful and honest and open about things. There's much more of a flow, and it's happening much more quickly as well. So shifts are happening really quickly. Dynamics are kind of evening out really quickly. Communication between people who are feeling and seeing and sensing this oneness is almost telepathic sometimes. Words are more and more unnecessary as everyone just feels the same thing. It's kind of, oh, yes, yes, okay. And you're passing the information back and forth consciously or semi-consciously or unconsciously, but it just feels like there's so much more of a flow to it. And the contrast now between those who are aware of this or semi-aware of this and those who are completely unaware of it and in denial of it is just extreme now to me. It really feels like, so sometimes I'll get people coming into the clinic who are going, oh, people are just ignoring these COVID restrictions. It's ridiculous. And, they're touching each other and they're communicating and they're not wearing masks. And it just seems it's like an alien talking to me these days, because to me, it's like this little island that they're creating for themselves, which is so untrue and it's so unreal. But you can still see the whirring, the cogs whirring, and it's like there's all these words with no substance now. There's no depth to them. There's nothing grounding them, like we've spoken about before, but there's no foundation to them. So to me, it just feels like everything's much more fluid and more flowing and interactive and connected. Everything's so strongly connected. I mean, it feels amazing. It feels really beautiful. and it's just kind of ripe with possibilities. So people that are putting restrictions on things or kind of putting their own cap on what is possible or what can happen or what can be true are really just putting blinkers on, because it feels at the moment that anything and everything is possible. And when relating to others, it's like you're almost singing a duet, or you're creating something together that speaks it into reality or energizes it into reality, because everything's moving so quickly. Stop rambling. Yep. But anyway, go on. Somebody else say something.
So I did notice a change. I've noticed that, let's say, a couple of months ago, it was mostly fights and it was mostly defending your grounds. And right now, as you say, Kim, it's mostly in flow. Even within my own family, we rarely have any arguments about things. I've also noticed a shift this week. I don't know how to explain it, but then I go to pick up my boy after school. And usually, even though it's not mandatory or we don't have to wear a mask outside, but I noticed that parents were still wearing them to meet their kids. But this week, especially parents within my boys' class, I'm coming in, the same parents are not wearing masks. And I was like, what's happening? And it seems like they all decided to do it at the same time. There might be one odd one that's still wearing one. So it was kind of interesting. So I did notice a change. It's like, I'm not sure what's happened there. And I think those people who still haven't worked out those patterns, they are coming up strongly now. That's something I've also noticed. I think if you were trying to hold to something for a long time or not communicating, I didn't get a chance to do it earlier, then I feel now is the time. Anyway, that's what I've noticed, that people are working through the things. I've also had a friend who contacted me saying that her soul was singing while she was watching inauguration, and I wanted to say something. And I was like, there is no need to pick up the fight. I know where she stands. I'm pretty sure she knows where I stand, looking at some of my, in the past, Facebook posts, and I just didn't say anything to that because I don't feel like there is any need for the fight. And the same, I met some old friends and I know their stance too, and we had a wonderful conversation, nothing about politics. And I don't know, it felt beautiful, but it could be just me reflecting how I feel inside, that I don't really feel the need to argue my point or to let everyone know where I stand.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I agree. I feel similar in that for me, there feels like so much joy and possibility that it feels, at the moment for me anyway, irrelevant to argue points with strangers or friends just because they feel what they feel. They're seeing things as they see things. I see things as I see things. I'm feeling what I'm feeling. And it doesn't matter. I've been noticing it a lot with people who claim to be healers or energy workers or that kind of thing at the moment, in that there is such a, not with everyone by any means, but with a large proportion of them, there's such a separation in that their immediate first go-to is, what can I do to help other people? What can I do to change things? How can I shift things? And that feels off to me. It feels really old and outdated. Because to me, it feels like I was saying earlier, because there's such oneness, such connection, it's not down to the individual. Everything is the same. Everything is one. So as one person raises their vibration, everybody's vibration gets lifted. So as one person lets go of old stories, other people let go of old stories. It's like a domino effect. So it's not about one person through striving and trying and consciously wanting to make a difference, doing anything. It's more of a fluid dance now. So I feel that for all of us now, it's down to us to just focus our energy upwards, focus it as high as we can, highest vibration possible, focus on the joy, focus on the possibility, focusing on the connection. And we don't have to consciously or actively really do anything as such, because it will just ripple out through the group, because we're all one. It's like one big cell, it feels like to me. And those who don't see that, or who don't want to acknowledge that or see the truth in that, they will be affected whether they want it or not, so it just feels much softer edge to me. There's no, I think this, therefore what you think must be wrong. It's more just, well, this is truth. This is my truth. Feels like universal truth. So, take it or leave it. Agree with it or don't agree with it. It doesn't matter. It just feels much more cohesive now. So yeah, all the sharp edges feel like they've rubbed off. It's more like instead of there being corners, now there's just space. So, you can't really bounce off space. So yeah, it just feels different. But I feel that relating to people, I find that when people come into work and they're doing the whole fear about COVID, like this woman came in, she works in a hospital, and she was just stressed out of her mind. I don't know what role she had. She was too stressed to even tell me. But she was saying, oh, it's so busy and all these people ignoring COVID laws and rah, rah. And she went off on a massive rant. And I just let her rant, and I was just watching her speaking, just thinking, God, you've got such dark bars, you're in this little cage that's just millimeters away from your body. You've kind of created this really rough, hard cell for yourself. And it's just all fear. It's just fear is making you rigid. And so I just let her talk, and I just smiled at her and didn't agree or disagree. It was just kind of like, oh, right, okay, yeah, I just can't relate to that. But it's interesting. I'm finding that these people that are like that seem to be more and more isolated, and like you were saying, Katya, it's kind of more and more people seem to be, whether consciously or unconsciously, not wearing masks and, standing shoulder to shoulder again and relating and smiling and sharing smiles and all of this kind of thing. So things feel very different, even though on the surface they may not be, but it feels very different to me now.
But I see what you mean when you say it's all about ascending higher, because one of the desires that came in recently is really to the point where I don't care what's happening in the world. All I care about is doing my practices and really taking this time for ascending. That's really what came up for me strongly, because everything else feels like it's irrelevant.
Yeah, me too. It's almost like a story that's happening. Somebody's reading it on the radio or something, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm half listening, but not really. Yeah, that feels true for me as well. It's more about focusing inward, but that's also outward. And it's almost like skating over the surface of it. It's not getting drawn into it, but just noticing it when it's around you. But it just feels very unreal to me. All of it feels so unreal to me. It's like, like people have been saying, Aratima and other people, but it really just feels like it's a little play that's happening, with a very bad acting, but it's a little play that somebody's written that's not very well written, bad actors, and it's funny. But it's, the focus is just on just being, I guess, expanding, being, and it just feels beautiful. So I'm finding when I'm speaking to people and some response is needed, it's coming out, which is good. I'm glad responses are coming out. So I'm able to go, oh, really? Oh, no, that's a shame. Oh, wow, all this kind of stuff. But it feels it's just on the surface, it's very, the mouth is moving because you're talking to me and I'm responding, but the rest of me is just carrying on doing what it's doing.
Can you speak a little bit more about that? When you say the rest of me is carrying on doing what it's doing, like, what is that like?
For me, it feels just like the focus is like there's a stillness and expansion and just this overwhelming joy. It's just bubbling up. So it's like my face is doing things. It's responding as people talk, or the mouth is moving and words are coming out. But there's 0.0001% attention on that. The rest is just sitting in this stillness and this joy. And just unmoving, but it's just like sunshine, it's just glorious. So because I have to work externally and I have to interact with people, I'm going through the motions, and now I seem to be doing it really successfully. People aren't noticing, I don't think. Though there are moments where it's kind of the surface breaks down and there's like a oops, reboot. I'll kind of stop and go, I don't know what's happening. And people go, you're right. And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know.
Like, I don't even know what I just said.
I don't know where I am. So, I think I'm dressed, but yeah, that's what it feels like. And it's just all a show, and it feels like for me, even though I'm having these conversations about COVID or about masks or about things that people want to talk about when they come in, I just feel so joyful that the conversations don't last very long, because the mouth just starts talking about something else, And I'm finding it interesting as well, because people will be coming in all kind of tense and stressed and talking about COVID, and they'll leave smiling and laughing. And I don't know what we're talking about, but there's a shift in energy, And I guess that goes back to what I was saying before about, because it's all one, it's just oneness. If I'm feeling such joy, they can't not feel the joy because they're connected to me. We're one, So it's that whole thing of feeling something or helping myself helps others. There's no, I'm doing this for me and I'm keeping it away from you. It's more of a, when you're providing a service or you're serving others, you're serving the whole, you're serving yourself, you're serving everyone, And for me, it feels just like whatever energy I'm feeling or I'm in or I'm being seems to just be vibrating out, which is great. I'd have to know about it. I'd have to don't see what's happening, but it seems to be having an effect.
People must be coming for a healing session to the clinic. They think they're coming for a dog visit, but they're actually coming to talk to Kim and then leave smiling without even realizing it.
Leaving their dogs behind, and just walking out going, I'm sure I'm missing something. What's happening? Yeah.
I can just see you being bubble of joy, and then you're talking to people, and then at some point smiles come up. And I was like, what's happening? We're just talking serious matters.
No, it does feel like it, because sometimes there's only so much of the show you can do. So if somebody's being serious and you're trying to keep a straight face, sometimes a laugh just bursts out completely inappropriately.
Did it happen to you?
Yeah. This woman came in and she was all kind of, and I just started laughing. I couldn't help it. It just came out. And she looked really horrified for about a second. And then she started laughing too. And you could see on her face, she had no idea why she was laughing. We just laughed for ages. And then she went, sorry, I don't know what happened. I was like, I know, I'm sorry.
Whereas I want to go back to my serious face. What's happened?
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, carry on about the depressing thing you were saying. That's fine.
Do you want to go back there? I didn't think so.
Yeah, it's really funny. But like going back to what you were saying, Danielle, about your family, because it feels like that's what's been happening with your family as well, amongst just your family.
Yes, the members of my family.
Members of the family, that's it. But it kind of feels like that's been happening as well.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's like certain things will come up where it's like, we still have cable, so my mom will be flipping through the channels and stuff, and she'll have like the news on or something, or I don't know, even like these commercials now. We have like COVID commercials and things like that.
Oh God.
And like, I'll either start just laughing hysterically because I think it's so ridiculous, or like my dad will say something and then we're all like laughing because it's just like so crazy. It's funny, but it's like you said, it's kind of like an inappropriate time, or what in the past would be deemed an inappropriate time. But I don't know, something about that makes it so much more funny, because it's like you're seeing how ridiculous this old programming is about like, oh, it would be inappropriate to do this now. And, actually something we've been talking about a lot too is joking about a lack of empathy, because they hyper emotionalize like everything on TV. It's like, there's this one show in particular, it's a game show, but it's like they always have these people on and they have like these really emotional moments like set up in the show, like exactly when it's gonna happen, and we're like, oh, here you go, we're like, we got another crier here, like, all that sort of stuff. And we're just joking about like not having any empathy, but it's just overhyped. It's like everything is over emotionalized. Oh, I always have to be on the edge of my seat, like ready to cry at any moment. And it's just like, oh my God. How do people live life like this? Like, is that what you want? That's how you want to live? I don't know.
It sounds like Danielle is like, I overcome my emotions. So who wants
Not at all. But it's just, when you look at people that are like constantly like, I don't know, it's just so ridiculous. It's like really, I don't know. It's just seeing it over and over again. It's like, okay.
But it's probably
like, I don't care anymore.
But that's because you've done probably a lot of work, and now all of this seems ridiculous because some people still want to live in that drama. And
yeah, I guess that's true.
And this is something I've noticed within, my family too, that some members of the family, they're just creating drama out of nothing. They just want to create a drama because that's how they lived all their life. And even if drama doesn't serve anyone, they're still creating it, because otherwise the life is boring.
Well, they don't understand their life then, because it's like there's nothing to fight against, or there's nothing to get really emotional about, or talk to everyone about. Sometimes that's part of it, isn't it? The relating is the kind of, oh, well, I've got this problem. Oh my God, and then everyone goes, oh, really? What's happened? And you're like, oh God. Yeah, no, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean, Danielle. It's a good point in that some people do really seem to want to be on that edge of hyper emotion all the time. And it's almost like that's the only way that they feel alive. Like you said, Katya, it's interesting to see. And to see them in this kind of consistently hyped up state, which must be doing terrible things to their blood pressure, you know. But no, it's interesting. It's part of the play acting, though, isn't it? It's kind of like, you know, bad actors over dramatizing. It's all kind of, oh, woe is me, you know, hand to forehead sort of thing.
Right. But for the people who are watching it that aren't aware necessarily of what might be going on with that, I feel like they're really trying to push that. This is normal. People are always this emotional. You know, you need to be ready to cry at any second. Any life can be dramatic or whatever it is, you know? And I just see that a lot. All these heightened emotions like being pushed through either posts on social media or on television, and not even in scripted shows. I mean, I guess we could argue how much like game shows are scripted, but it's like they always have these people on that seem to have these hugely emotional stories, and everyone ends up crying, and it's just like, okay.
But it's part of the whole agenda, it feels to me at the moment. You know, it's again, it's the whole indoctrination hammer fest that's going on everywhere globally is so much more obvious now. I mean, it was obvious last year, but it's so much more obvious now. And with that kind of thing, it is a real sort of, it's not even subtle, the whole manipulation for people to feel a certain way, whether it is to feel sad about that or to feel guilty about this, whatever the script is, you know, it's very heavy-handed, and it's getting more and more obvious. And you see that, I mean, it's a good example in, I don't watch TV, but, you know, when I used to, the whole, right, so this story is very, very obvious from the outset. You know, you're going to know what's going to happen. You're going to feel this at this point. They're going to push this button. They're going to make you want to feel sorry for that person or get swept up in this emotion or whatever it is. It's all the same as what's happening with the whole COVID agenda and everything else. It's all, the kind of underlying thing is you're a bad person if you don't feel this or you don't respond in this way, which is just ridiculous because everyone responds in their own ways, you know, and to be so indoctrinated and pushed into responding in only one correct, acceptable way is complete manipulation. It's dictatorship, really. And it's happening all the time. And people seem to be falling for it less and less because it's so much more obvious now. But those that are still falling for it really are standing out. When the ones that come into work and they bleat out the mass marketed kind of words, and it's always word for word as well. And you just go, wow, no, you're not helping others by wearing a mask. No, it's not about keeping safe. And all the sob stories and all of that, it's all part of it. Like we keep mentioning, it's all part of this global play that's happening on the world stage. And all of it is just, oh, it's ridiculous. Because it's not true emotion, you know, because true emotion is completely different. But it's all squeezed out of you. It's kind of like, you know, we're all little oranges. It's like, we'll squeeze you now, and we'll squeeze you then, you know. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know a lot about this, but in terms of seeding consciousness, it's like they could squeeze a whole group of people who have bought into a particular storyline at the same time, and then it'll saturate kind of the population with whatever emotion they've decided to squeeze out of you. And I'm like, okay, so now they're squeezing fear. Okay, they want everyone to be really scared, like different stuff like that.
And I don't know if this is relevant or not, but just trying to think that if we're moving to Aquarium age, less of a earthy, grounded, I guess, feelings, then it would be more noticeable because there is really no space for that kind of drama. I don't know how relevant it is, but it's just something that came to my mind. So.
Yeah, fair point, definitely. Because the Aquarian, I don't know much about it, but Aquarian is more airy and spacious, isn't it? It's not so sort of earthy. And so, yeah, all this drama is like wisps in the wind, you know. It's kind of like, well, why are you trying to bring this heavy solidity here where it doesn't belong, it doesn't exist, it's not sustained, it's not real. Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good point too. It's rolling with the changes, like we said in our previous podcast. I can't remember when we recorded it, but
or if we posted it.
Or if we posted it. No, I think it was one of the ones we did. It was back when I was good. But yeah, it's about flowing with it. Change is inevitable, and in these huge changes we're going through, we just have to be open to them, because resisting change is just going to break your leg or break your whatever. So you have to be open to it.
Or break your ego.
Break your ego. Well, that's always a good one.
Yeah, maybe this whole hyper emotionalization of people is going to backfire, you know, because people they'll just get so tired of holding on to these contractions, these learned patterns, teaching them to contract, and they'll just keep really bringing up emotional pain and suffering for them over and over again. So maybe it'll be enough to the point where I'll be like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, but in a way where they actually let go of it,
Yeah, because there's only so much sustained, heightened, whatever emotional, whatever it is that people can hold. So yeah, they'll get to breaking point, I guess, and decide then which way to go or whatever, or just give up, or just kind of, I suppose it's, if you hold on to a story so tightly and it just cracks, you're like, there's none left. Okay.
Right. It just crumbles.
Yeah. Like, my hands are now empty. Okay.
There's nothing left. Interesting.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see that happening. I see them just being so stuck in the story, no matter what it is, even if they see that they're falling through, and it's, instead of being a subject, it's, I don't know, an heir, for example, right? And it's just not there, but I can see people still clinging so hardly because this is a habit. This is something that many people done for the whole life. So it's not easy to just go and break. I can see people being sick or not just adjusting well and having other issues, but not necessarily letting go of the story. Because with the older people in particular, I don't know, some young too, I'm sure, if you're really, really stuck in that story and you're not flexible of accepting any other possibilities, then you're just going to break. But I think break physically in terms of the diseases and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you believe it to be true so strongly and you fear it so much, it is going to be true, and it's going to have all the effects that you most fear.
I can understand it, though, in terms of relating to people who are stuck in those types of stories, because almost everywhere that you're told to get your information from is feeding you the exact same thing, almost in the exact same way now. That's why it's kind of like a joke to me, because I'm like, it's literally the exact same thing. And I saw recently, and it was, okay, I came up in like a compilation video. There's a YouTuber that does This Week in Culture. Well, I don't even know if his channel's still on YouTube, because, they got rid of a lot of people. But there was a clip, and it included like these athletes being like, I'm so-and-so, I play for this team and I wear a mask. And I was like, all right, listen, like, if this thing was really that horrible, you wouldn't have to keep telling people over and over again to wear a mask. Like, it would be so obvious that everyone would just be doing it out of their own fear of survival. You wouldn't have to convince people to wear it. And since March, like, you know what I mean? Like, you've been trying to convince people for almost a year now that they have to wear masks. If it was really that scary for everyone, like that horrible, if you were witnessing these things around you in your physical reality, you wouldn't have to be convinced to wear a mask. You'd just be wearing one.
Yeah. But again, that's part of the indoctrination, isn't it? Because it's getting more and more desperate, and as things get more and more desperate, they get more and more intensely pushed, and it is ridiculous. I mean, it's always been ridiculous, but it's even more ridiculous now. And I think more and more people are just seeing it. And those that don't. But yeah, they're wheeling out all the famous people, the celebrities going, wear a mask, stay safe and all this sort of stuff. I mean, it's just funny. It seems funny to me. But everything seems funny to me right now. So it's kind of like, I don't differentiate, the toilet is funny right now. So, but the window's hilarious.
But that's true. If people were dying, just standing and dying outside, people would be wearing one, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, if you see people dropping dead.
Right. You wouldn't have to tell me to be afraid. I would be afraid because I'd be seeing these things happen. I'm not scared because I'm not experiencing everything that I've been told about being scared has all come through TV or the internet or something. Nothing in my personal life. Like, I have no reason to be afraid.
Yeah. And the number of people that have come into the clinic and said, I was diagnosed with COVID and it was so mild, I barely noticed, I'm fine now, is really high. Or the people that said it's just like flu, because it was flu, but it's just like flu. So in personal experience, it's like, well, some people's relatives die, but some people's relatives die anyway. Mm-hmm. And people are seeing that more and more. People are more relaxed about it, or some people are.
You can only push it so long and so hard, right? At some point, people will get fed up. More and more people are doing that. Another thing I wanted to mention that I didn't notice also a change within my family. So you know how there is this whole thing leaving Facebook and moving to different social platform. It's actually also my husband mentioned that he was planning to get all the information so he knows what they have and close his Facebook account. So he was not really active on it or anything. It was sort of interesting how he mentions it at the similar time when everyone else is trying to leave Facebook. So it's like, oh, that's a change.
Yeah, and also more evidence about it all being a collective consciousness. It's all oneness, because it's in the air, and people are thinking things and going, oh, I might do that, thinking it's their thought, but it's the mass thought.
There is something that I want to share, but I don't know how relevant it is to what we're talking about right now. So I was having a conversation with my friend about, death just being another experience and how this perspective has grown in me. Because I'll start to think about scenarios, even though I'm pretty confident in knowing what's going on. But in times of doubt, I try to, reason with myself a little bit. I say, okay, so what's the worst that could happen? I end up in a situation where, I might end up dying, right? Whatever it is, getting thrown into like a re-education camp or something. And then what's like the worst case scenario? Probably maybe torture, I don't know. And then death. But I'm like, death is just another experience. And this is something that I actually am beginning to feel to be true rather than just thinking about it. And it's really been helpful to me because I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter then. Everything is just going to be another experience. So I'll have to respond to the experiences as they come. So I don't know, it just helps me, I guess, not to worry about how things are unfolding and not worry so much about what's right in front of me and say, oh, this makes me really feel like this might happen. I can pull back that kind of emotion and then maybe see things a little bit more objectively than emotionally.
Makes sense. And I also remember at some point Naratimus said that when you're in fear, you have too much time in your hands.
Mm-hmm, right. Too much time. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she called it a luxury emotion, didn't she? Yeah. But that's a good point as well about death, because it just demonstrates the oneness and the unity of everything, because death is just another facet of this oneness. So you stop being Danielle as a Danielle, and you flow back into the oneness, and then you pop out as a Jenny or something, or a Peter or whatever, because it is all part of everything. So yeah, it is relevant because it's part of, relating to change, relating to things that you see as change. And death really isn't change. It's just a different facet of the same thing. So again, that's part of, with the veil being pulled back, is part of being able to see more clearly that it's not about you and them, us and them, separation, difference. It's all about everything being the same. Everything's just the same, but just different colors or different tones of the same color. So I feel that's relevant. That was our conversation on relating to others in these times of great change. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do leave a comment if you did, or if you have any questions, please do write them below if you're watching this on YouTube. Please press the little bell icon so you can be kept up to date with all of our upcoming podcasts. And do share with your friends, with anyone you think might appreciate our conversations. And do like and subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye. I stopped at the week. I was like, next week. Yes, I'll edit it. I will.
It'll get done. Yes, it will.
It will.
You have to remember to do it after this one.
But watch after that one gets posted, it's gonna be like internet blackout. Damn it! I said next week.
Oh my God, where's truth in this lie?